The Louisville Cardinals escaped disaster with a close win on the road at Virginia on Saturday.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on, everyone? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I want to take this time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. The Louisville Cardinals 24-20 winners over the Virginia Cavaliers on Saturday. It was a close victory, one in which Louisville escaped disaster. Not pretty, but a win in conference play is a win in conference play. Offense was up and down. Isaac Brown had a huge day on the ground to propel the Cards' offense. And the defense, again, not really all that great in defending a mobile quarterback, but they made plays when they needed to down the stretch. So a lot to unpack, a lot to dissect on this performance. But I think that the main thing that we can take away from this is that Louisville escaped disaster. If you remember last week when we previewed this matchup, we kind of had the same tone all week, and that was that you basically can't afford to lose this game, because if you did, well, number one, that would be 3 straight losses. It seems like things would be going in a free fall, and it would be time to panic. But even more importantly is that you still haven't faced some of the top teams on your schedule. Like, matchups with Miami and Clemson still loom later on this season. You have an undefeated 6-0 Pittsburgh that you'll have to play. You'll have to go on the road to Kentucky, a team that you haven't beaten since 2017. So the pathway to bowl eligibility at 3-3 would have been pretty interesting, right? Because you would have had to maybe beat a team that you might not even be favored to beat. And even if you wanted to be blindly optimistic, this would have been a team that had lost to SMU and Virginia, 2 squads that Louisville was about a touchdown favorite, give or take. The vibes just would have been off. Like, we would have been panicking. I will be fully transparent. When Louisville went down 20-17 in the fourth quarter, one thing that I was thinking was, okay, what are the different titles of the show that I'm going to have if they win or lose? And win would be they escaped disaster. If they lost, it would be it's time to panic. So getting the win is key. We'll start out this way. You can say all you want about the effort and the performance and what happened on the field on Saturday. The bottom line is that Louisville snapped a 2-game losing streak and got a victory. That's the bottom line. Not only was it a victory, you were on the road in conference play. And to push the narrative just a little bit further, you got a victory in a place where historically you really don't play good. Like, Louisville just does not, for whatever reason, since they've joined the ACC, when they go to Charlottesville, it's just something's off. Like, Louisville just does not really play well there. And it's not really like a home field advantage that Virginia has. It's just a weird phenomenon that I'm not really sure I can explain. I guess you could say that usually Louisville, Virginia, wherever that game is at, is a close game. Now, you have your occasional blowout in the series here and there, but on the road at Virginia, a team that is obviously better than they were a season ago, with some of those pieces that hurt you last year when they were really bad, like Anthony Calandria, I was worried about defending him, and look what he did. He still had a very, very good game on the ground. So we start off the recap talk by doing a little bit of acknowledging what we're going to talk about, and what went right, what went wrong, pales in comparison to the fact that Louisville was victorious in this game. Because you can play really good and lose a game, and it doesn't matter, because there's no asterisk in the win-loss column. There's no shoulda, coulda, woulda. And thankfully, Louisville was able to overcome some of their self-inflicted mistakes this time around. Some of the same issues that unfortunately we saw again on Saturday, but Louisville was able to overcome them, and they were able to do so on the road and tasked with having a game-winning drive to go down and take the lead, and they did that. The Cardinals clutched up when they needed to. It was very 2023-esque when Louisville was faced with adversity last season. One thing that they did, and one of the reasons why they started out 6-0, is because when adversity struck, they rose to the occasion. Georgia Tech rose to the occasion. Indiana rose to the occasion. NC State, so on and so forth. So being able to get this victory, it's satisfying because you definitely savor the victories in themselves. Victories are extremely significant. It's a conference victory. Virginia was 2-0 in conference play. Now, I don't really want to discuss ACC implications coming off of this win because it was a game that you were indeed supposed to win. So we talk about what's at stake. Winning a game, you have the opportunity to turn the ship into the right direction and try to get things moving into the way that you want them to go. It was, the season's not going to turn around in 1 week. A week against Virginia isn't going to, make everything suddenly okay, especially not in the fashion in which Louisville won this game, because I thought Louisville was definitely the better team, but things just got very, very weird in this game, and Louisville made them weird. Obviously, officiating. Don't get me started. It feels like every week ACC referees create a new rule. Like, I don't know what it is, why Louisville just can't get the right spot when they get tackled, but it's like an ACC ref just immediately takes a step back and spots at a yard back. It's just completely stupid how much this is occurring and how it's become a running narrative that we've had to address. And people think it's lazy, saying, oh, well, officiating, you keep blaming officiating. Well, we've had the same tone, is that you can't blame officiating for some of these losses that Louisville's had. But you go back and watch the game and watch some of these calls and take let's be honest, it's the people that are commenting about Louisville fans complaining about officiating are falling into two categories. Number one, they're Kentucky fans, or they're fans of the other team. There's no in between. Like, it's just the way it is. There will be Kentucky fans that, they could beat the number one team in the country and they would rather watch a Louisville podcast about them losing and talk trash there, but I digress. So the officiating, again, was just not good. Now, there were some instances to where some of the penalties were justifiable. And if you look at the numbers, it's pretty fair. But when the commentary is talking about a hold on Louisville and saying that basically it's a vet move while he's clearly holding them, and then the next drive, Louisville gets away with basically the same thing. And the calls, well, here they go, letting them play a little bit more physical. I'm like, it's the same thing. It's the double standard. Oh, well, the thing about it is when the officiating is that bad, you have to work harder and do more to not put yourself in a position to lose. Because let's face it, this was not a perfect performance from Louisville. It's far from it. This was a game that Louisville probably should have won by over 2 touchdowns, and they won by 4 points. They had a 10-point lead in the third quarter, and then everything just absolutely stalled out. They gave up far too many rushing yards to a mobile quarterback for the 5th consecutive game. They gave up big plays. They seemingly weren't prepared to start the game. Now, it wasn't all bad. They had some good things. The ground game was really solid. Multiple players stepped up. Tyler Shuck took charge on the final drive. Play calling at times was suspect again, to where, I talked about tempo being the main reason for why this offense doesn't look like maybe a Jeff Brohm offense at Purdue and Western Kentucky. I feel like Louisville's play calling was rather conservative in this game. So if you were looking to feel better about the performance, the only thing that you really find any type of comfort in is that Louisville won this game. But in terms of looking down the road to Miami on Saturday, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little nervous for it because, I mean, Miami's a 4.5-point favorite, and even that feels like it's not enough. And we'll obviously discuss this matchup as we get closer and closer to the end of the week. But if there is one takeaway, it's that, number one, Louisville escaped disaster, but despite a bad performance, despite the officiating, they got to win on the road in conference play at a place against a team that they usually don't play well against. But there's a lot to work on. There's some of the same issues that keep recurring, but thankfully a good amount of players rose to the occasion on Saturday. One of those players was perhaps the player of the game. Isaac Brown, true freshman running back, was absolutely phenomenal. We'll break down his performance on the next episode. I'm sorry, not next episode, next segment of Locked On Louisville. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new role, but might be open to the perfect one. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. I got my most recent job that I started in early September on LinkedIn, applied, heard back within 24 hours, got the interview done, and nonetheless, I have a new job. It's that simple. It was the career change that I needed, and it's all thanks to LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cardinal fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. As we sort of break down the performances on both sides of the football, which is sort of the rubric for what we like to accomplish on the post-game episode, because we get really analytical into the X's and O's, what happened, the effects of certain plays. We start on the offensive side of the ball. The player of the game for the Cardinals, without a doubt, is true freshman running back Isaac Brown. One thing that we said last week was that Brown was fantastic against SMU. He had 10 carries for 117 yards. It was his second game of his young career at Louisville where he has had over 100 yards, but he only had 10 carries. And I remember not only myself, but the rest of the fan base saying, this guy needs to be getting 15 carries minimum, more so 20. Well, he got those 20 carries on Saturday against Virginia, who has a middle-of-the-road rush defense. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Isaac Brown carried the ball 20 times against Virginia, 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both are all three statistics career highs for Isaac Brown. He was the first true freshman to have 2 rushing touchdowns in a single game since Lamar Jackson did it back close to about a decade ago in the 2015 season. He now has over 500 yards rushing. He is I want to say a little over 400 yards away from breaking Lamar Jackson's single-season rushing record for a freshman in Louisville history, and he's got 6 games to do so. Now, you are playing some better competition down the line, but I think one thing is for certain is that Isaac Brown is a star in the making. We all heard the comments from Jeff Brohm in the offseason comparing him to Jawar Jordan. Not only is that ironic that he has the breakaway speed that Jordan did, but also he is doing it with the same number on his jersey. I went from being in the mindset that you need to find a way to get this guy on the field early on to you need to give him 20 carries a game minimum, because there's the question over his size, and he's 5'9", 190 pounds. He's not the largest guy, But when you talk about the speed that he has, that next level burst and acceleration, you couple that with the outstanding elite vision that he has put on display every week, it makes too much sense. He is a house call waiting to happen. Fantastic. And he was probably reason 1A as to why Louisville was able to be victorious in this game. Like, Louisville's passing offense wasn't really the greatest, and that's weird because this is a passing defense that's really not all that great. Shuck was 18 of 31 for 231 yards and a touchdown. He had the one interception, but that was sort of a desperation throw in the end zone. Not the greatest game from Tyler. He took a couple sacks that he shouldn't have, but the Cardinals carried the ball 31 times for 177 yards, 5.7 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. Duke Watson had 7 for 25. Don Chaney 1 for 7. Tyler Shuck ended with -1 yards because of the sack yardage factored in. But Isaac Brown was incredible in this game. You look at some of the plays that he had. Obviously, the touchdown on the 7-yard run on 1st and goal, where Louisville was able to finally answer Virginia after Virginia scored that first drive of the game. It was at that point 7-7. Got to the second quarter. Isaac Brown had it was a 14-yard touchdown on the punt that the Virginia guy punted into his own lineman's back. The next play, Isaac Brown found the end zone, and he continued to be effective as we went along. So Isaac Brown, the main storyline here, the hands down, without a doubt, player of the game for the Cardinals. I'm so excited to see what he's going to be able to do this Saturday against his hometown team, the Miami Hurricanes. He is from Homestead, Florida. I think he's from Homestead, either that or he's from Miami, the all same area. You get what I'm saying. He's from the South Florida area. But unfortunately, the passing game had its woes. I think it started out with the offensive line. There were some penalties. Right tackle continued to be a problem for Louisville. Virginia had a couple sacks in this game. I think that they ended with 3 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. 2 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. Louisville's offensive line had times where they struggled. There were other times where they gave Tyler Shuck some time to throw. But even when they did give Shuck some time to throw, 2 things kind of held. I'll say 3 things. Number 1, there were times that Tyler Shuck held on to the ball for too long. That is probably the least frequent of the 3 that we're talking about. Number 2, there were some drops. Louisville's receivers had some drops. Isaac Brown had a drop. Chris Bell had, I think, at least 1 drop. Ja'Cory Brooks had at least 1 drop. Louisville has to do a better job of corralling in the football and being able to extend plays, because one thing that is killing some of these offensive drives is the drop passes, and they killed a couple of drives on Saturday. And then the situational play calling. We go back to that 4th and 1. Jeff Brohm said last week, running up the middle on 4th and 1 isn't something that's going to happen again. And then you look at, the first drive that Louisville had. They marched the ball down the field, had 4th and 1 at the Virginia 19. Isaac Brown ran for no gain up the middle, and they turned the ball over. Now, thankfully, Louisville's defense was able to rise to the occasion. But, again, it just goes to show you that I think that this week was one where, usually I made it a point of emphasis saying that the tempo is one of the issues with why everyone thinks that this offense looks so much different than what you saw from a Jeff Brohm offense at Purdue and at Western Kentucky. But I think on Saturday against Virginia, it felt like the play calling was fairly conservative. Not many deep shots, not many balls, thrown outside of the intermediate area. I don't know if that was because of offensive line play, but if that is, you're going up against not a great, maybe a good pass rush, maybe, and you're not able to create, the time for the vertical routes to go. I mean, what's going to happen when you play Miami, Clemson, and Kentucky? It's not going to get any easier, y'all. So the situational play calling, the drops, the self-inflicted mistakes, the penalties, they all add up. And people want to know, well, why is Louisville's offense not doing much? it's not just one thing. It's multiple things coming together to just hold this offense back, because you look at the numbers, they recorded 408 yards of total offense. Like, it wasn't a terrible offensive game, but they only scored 24 points. And one of those touchdowns was on a short field that Virginia's punter basically gifted you. So you could very easily may have justified that this would have been a 17-point game against a Virginia offensive, one of the worst pass defenses in the ACC. So against Miami, very interesting. You're going to go up against a really good defensive line, a good linebacker core, a respectable secondary. What's going to happen? Are you going to see Louisville open the playbook up? Will they just try to utilize the run to develop the play action to open up the field? There's one thing that we're going to talk about later as we go through the week. One thing that I feel like Louisville needs to do moving forward, utilize the tight ends more in the receiving game. That is definitely something that I feel like should be done. But we'll talk about that, like I said, on an episode coming up this week. Defensively, stop me if you've heard this before. The Cardinals were not effective in defending Anthony Colandrea, or in this case, defending a mobile quarterback. We'll discuss when we come back. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the official ticket marketplace for all of your sports, comedy, theater, and music events near you. Watching basketball in person is a feeling like no other. The sound from the court, the feel of the crowd, and much, much more. I can't wait to use Gametime for all of my Louisville basketball ticket needs. When I downloaded the app, look, it was pretty much all set in stone that I was going to use Gametime for eternity at this point. I mean, the all-in pricing feature that you can toggle on that will remove the surprise fees at checkout. What about the panoramic views from your seats that you get, or the most fantastic insurance coverage, protection coverage that you have? Or if that's not enough, the Gametime lowest price guarantee, which means if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Locked On College is the code to redeem for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. The Louisville defense had its ups and downs on Saturday. As much as I feel like they're getting more scrutiny than they should, some of these same issues are recurring and they're not getting fixed. And it starts with defending the mobile quarterback. And what did Louisville not do well on Saturday? Defend the mobile quarterback. Anthony Colandrea, I wouldn't say is truly a dual threat. At least he hasn't been as much this year, right? Maybe not so much to the tune of other guys like Haynes King, Riley Leonard, Kevin Jennings, and Tyler Huff. But Colandrea got sacked 3 times on Saturday. And incorporating that sack yardage into the total, he ran 15 times for 84 yards. He was the top rusher for Virginia. Like, Louisville has continued to do well defending the traditional running back. Kobe Pace had 10 carries for 38 yards. Xavier Brown, 8 for 19. Both of those are under 4 yards a carry. But Anthony Colandrea ad-libbed a lot. RPOs where he pulled the ball and ran. He just completely dissected this Louisville defense, and it was an issue, and Louisville did not really have an answer for it. Now, it wasn't a terrible defensive performance considering that you only gave up 20 points, but you look at some of the things that the Cardinals withstood. There was the situation in the, what was that? Was that the first quarter? I think it was the first quarter. Yes, the first quarter where Virginia moved the ball down the field. They had 1st and goal, and Louisville was able to get a goal line stand. Look, the issue is that the Cavaliers had 449 yards of total offense. Like, as much as I think this defense is getting over scrutinized to a point, let's call it how it is. You give up 450 yards of offense. You let a running quarterback run for over 80 yards again, and you have no idea how to stop them. And to make matters worse, one of the things that we have been complaining about as Louisville fans and on this show is how unprepared Louisville has been to start the game. Now, maybe they adjusted sooner this game, but what did Virginia do? The very first drive, they got the ball. 11 plays, 75-yard touchdown drive. They had two third downs, and they were within a 1-yard distance. Louisville could not stop Virginia on the first drive. This is just weird to me, is because you have a lot of the same personnel. You have the same coaching staff. Last year, you were so good defensively in the first quarter. Now it's flip-flopped. It's like your team is just completely unprepared. Like, why is Louisville struggling so hard with the opening script? Like, you know that teams are going to try to make you pay defending a mobile quarterback because you haven't been able to show that you can do that in 4 consecutive games. The Calandria had 32 yards rushing, 31 or 32 yards rushing on the first drive of the game. At what point do you change the way you do things? At what point, Louisville, I think one thing is that they need to stop getting so far upfield on the pass rush because it's allowing a quarterback to sidestep the rush and just go upfield. They have to be better tackling wise. Technique has been an issue. Broken coverage was an issue. Calandria throwing the ball. He was 26 of 45, 279 yards and a touchdown. I will give the defense credit. They did what they needed to do to get the win on the final drive. But the defense had a 17-7 lead. 17-7. You let Virginia go 12 plays, 62 yards to kick a field goal. You then let Virginia go 10 plays, 54 yards to kick another field goal, and 4 plays, 77 yards. I mean, with that tight coverage, you basically oversold on the run for 3rd and 6 to bring the pressure, and Anthony Calandria found a wide open receiver for a 46-yard touchdown. Now, thankfully, you were able to get a punt and, a turnover on downs after that. But there are the same issues, and it's not just defensively, it's the whole team, to where soft coverage. You play that zone coverage, and Calandria just had receivers running up to the sticks, turning around and catching the football without much of a contest. Now, Louisville did have, you go back to the box score here, I wanted to see what the pass deflections looked like. Louisville had 8 pass deflections. I felt like Quincy Riley had a good game in coverage. Tay Holloway gambled on a couple plays, but he had some good plays. Corey Thornton had a play. Tamarian McDonald, you name it. Ashton Gelati. I mean, the Cardinals got pressure after Calandria. It just didn't really get home a ton. They had plays where they had Calandria in the backfield, but once again, tackling was not the greatest. So you're going up against another mobile quarterback, perhaps the most dangerous one that you will have played all season. Cam Ward comes to Louisville on Saturday. Louisville has once again not been able to show that they can defend a mobile quarterback. Something's got to change because Cam Ward will run all over this defense and he'll throw all over this defense. Changes are needed, and we'll preview this matchup as we get later and later into the week. Coming back tomorrow, we'll talk about some of the offensive woes. We'll talk about including tight end play and much, much more. This is going to wrap up this Monday edition of Locked On Louisville. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.